I think as former refugees and immigrants who are profiting off this land, it's so important that we accept this invitation that's contained in the statement to work together with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in a movement for a better future. I would also like to acknowledge that it is Refugee Week, and tonight is part of a series of events hosted by the Mountains Multicultural Interagency in celebration of Refugee Week. So welcome everyone, the speakers, the coordinators, and everyone watching the live session. I'll keep introductions brief for now, otherwise it'll take me a very long time getting through all the panelists' contributions to not only their community, but Australia and internationally as well. So on today's panel, we have she might join later, but Najeeba Wazefadost, and Samzin Kalang. Now, I hope everyone that this isolation period hasn't been too rough and that you enjoyed some aspects of it. I know I certainly enjoyed the lack of commute, spending more time with family, doing lots of self-reflection and jumping on the bandwagon with this TikTok frenzy that's happening at the moment. I know Shakik can relate to that. Maybe I should do a quick icebreaker. How does that sound? Yeah. Okay, so what's one thing that you've taken away from this isolation period that you've learned?
Who will go first? I mean, since I'm talking, I'll go first.
I go for it.
Yeah, personally, I think the most important thing that I've taken is that to be kind to people that you don't even know. Like, for example, in the world right now, like literally people are losing their family members and the world needs so much more kindness. You really need to be caring of other people because right now humans are closest than they have ever been. For example, a person in Australia is going through the same thing, with the virus or the disease that someone in Afghanistan, where I'm from, is going. So I think that's the most significant thing that I have taken away from this whole situation, this whole pandemic.
I agree with that. Samzin, do you have any comments to make about perhaps one thing that you're taking away from this pandemic?
Can you? Hello everyone. Yes, I think during everyone is going like similar situation, and for myself, I think we can take from as you say, it's more like a self-reflection and understanding that it's kind of we have to understand where we are and not following like those busy time. Just be yourself and understand what's going on. Like just be present. It's what I can take from the COVID-19 times, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think so. Najeeba was supposed to be one of the speakers today, and I think she's done a lot of research on today's theme of discussion and review, which is the impacts of COVID-19 on refugee communities with a strong focus on women and girls. And I think that without a doubt, we can see how this pandemic has affected everyone globally, but I think this virus has affected vulnerable communities significantly as well. And, like refugees and asylum seekers at the most fundamental level, which is their ability to seek protection in another country. And, like not to get too political, but I think like as if we didn't have enough problems to bypass within, Australia's narratives of illegality and the political regime of deterrence, detention and denial. Now we have a global pandemic. How lovely. I think before I share some more thoughts on this topic, I guess I'll start off with a bit about myself. I was born in an Australian ethnic community called the Mandayans in Iraq, which were a group that were heavily persecuted. Our men were kidnapped, our women were raped, and our history was buried. It was certainly an unsafe space to be raised in, to say the very least, one of fragmentation and disjuncture, particularly after the 2003 invasion of Iraq by a United States-led coalition that overthrew the government of Saddam Hussein. And I think that was the beginning of a war on terror that compelled my family to seek refuge and asylum in Australia in 2008. I'm currently a full-time law and international studies student at the University of Technology. I also work full-time as a secretary at a commercial law firm, and I have contributed to a number of refugee and youth initiatives with Settlement Services International. I guess, Shaki, can you just introduce yourself briefly, and Samzin as well, if you can? Thanks, guys.
Yeah, of course. Samzin, do you want to go first, or should I go first?
Shakik, why don't you go, and then Samzin.
Okay, perfect. Well, so first of all, hello everyone. I'm really excited to be here. This is probably the most socializing I have been doing the past 2-3 months. So I'm really excited. I'm really happy to be here, and I really want to thank everyone that has taken time of their Friday night to come and join us and be here with us. So my name is Sequoia Cruz. I am originally from Afghanistan. I was born a refugee in Iran because my family fled Afghanistan during the 2000s to flee the persecution of the Hazara people. So as you can see, my ethnicity is Hazara. So that's why, because we are very easy to be distinguished, especially for our facial features and the sect of Islam that we practice. We are being persecuted, and we actually survived a genocide, so that's the good part. But in Iran, as refugees, we were heavily mistreated, and we are still to this day really mistreated, and we are usually denied our rights to own property, or go to school, or go to university, or have certain jobs. Okay, so hence why my father actually decided to seek a better life for me and my siblings in a better country where we could actually have a future. And he came to Australia, and since I came to Australia, I was actually quite young, but I've been really passionate about raising my voice and speaking up about my experience as a refugee, because a lot of people don't really know what it's like to be a refugee, and people just think maybe they just didn't like where it was, that's why we moved, but it's a lot more than that. So I've been actually I'm studying business marketing in Western Sydney University, and also I have been doing a lot of advocacy and refugee work in the sector since I came to Australia from 2013. I don't really like to talk much about myself, to be honest, even though I'm really, bubbly like this. So that's why I would like Samzin to introduce herself.
Hello everyone. I don't know what I have to introduce. Same as a refugee who lives here in Blue Mountain, and I'm from Tibet, and I was born in Tibet, and I escaped Tibet when I was 14 years old, and I left India for 7 years, and I did study there, and then I started life again in Australia in 2014. So yeah, and so right now I'm doing a support worker in a disability service sector, and also I'm doing online course Unique. It's a Bachelor of Business in Human Resource Management, and and my role in a community, I think it's me, because we have a small community in Blue Mountain, a Tibetan community, and it's a kind of new arrived community and emerging community, and so it's kind of connecting, because I have been doing community service work and study in TAFE last few years, and completed diploma as well. So through that, I just learned to connect with other people and other service providers, and so it was great privilege to help to have those people who are very supportive and very generous to our community here. And even as a newly arrived, there's lots of challenges and lots of struggle and lots of learnings to do, but it's still be a very welcoming country here, welcoming community here in Blue Mountain. So I'm very happy for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Shakik and Samzin, for those introductions. I think this idea of losing home at the risk of never finding home again, like Shakik and Samzin, I can also draw similarities between COVID isolating right now in this pandemic and the self-isolation that one feels as a refugee in their first few years of arrival and settlement. And I think the term precarity really sums up the experience as well. In sociology, this refers to a sense of emerging abandonment that pushes us away from a livable life. And social marginalization and employment uncertainty, these two are very common experiences that refugees endure. And right now, a lot of people are dealing with that as well as pandemic. I think in Arabic we say خوف من المجهول, which translates to a sense of uncertainty about the future, fear of the unknown. And I think in this pandemic context, fear of the unknown is very, very relevant. And I think Australia has had such a tough start to 2020 with droughts, bushfires, and then the coronavirus. Many have lost jobs, they've lost their family members, and they're struggling to stay afloat. And I know personally with this uncertainty surrounding COVID, although I'm still incredibly fortunate to be employed, I've also missed out on perhaps promotions, performance, salary reviews. Mum, for example, had to stop working so that she can supervise and support my siblings who were working and studying from home. She's also carer for my dad, and I know for a fact that many former refugee women are in similar positions. Shakik, would you say the same? Like, how's the experience been for you so far?
Yeah, I can definitely attest to everything that you said as well. So there's a very strong similarity between being isolated and being a refugee in many, many senses. So from my own personal experience when I was in Iran, to be honest, as Afghans, they are not allowed to go out in the first place because there was a big, massive chance of deportation, despite the fact that you had like legal documents. So, for example, now the restrictions have eased largely, which I'm really thankful for. But like let's say 2 months ago, there were like really extreme restrictions that you have to have like a valid reason to go out, okay, or unless you're going to be fined or you're going to be facing repercussions by the police. However, in being a refugee in Iran, if you went out, there was a chance that the police would like take you and they would just literally deport you straight to Afghanistan. They would not check your papers because they were not bothered with it. And there's a really huge misconception in Iran towards Afghans and Afghan refugees mainly as well. So entirely understand. But on the other hand, one of the other things that you mentioned about the fear of unknown, which is extreme and huge right now, especially with my own like extended family. So my extended family, my auntie and her family are actually right now refugees in Greek. In Greek. I mean in Greece. My English is my second language, guys. So yeah, right now they're actually in Greece, okay, and I'm seeing constantly, there's a lot of there's not enough resources for refugees in Greece, okay, and they're in refugee camps, and it's just so scary because I don't know what's going to be happening to them. I don't know when this is going to end, and I have no idea how this is going to be all fixed for them, and if they ever going to have a home, because in the first place they're also with us in Iran, but then we came to Australia and they also decided to leave because it was just, the situation was getting crazy. Like, I'm sure you might not know because information about Afghan refugees don't really spread as much, but just about 3 weeks ago, about 7 Afghan refugees were in a car and the car was shot by the police and it was set on fire. The Iranian police escaped the scene, and 4 Afghans were in the car. They were burnt alive, and 3 of them got third-degree burns, like strong burns on their bodies. And there were people just filming. There was no ambulance. There was no sort of help, anything for them. So I'm just saying, there's a lot of uncertainty that is going on, definitely, for myself as a former refugee, and also, myself just as a person that has family refugees.
Yeah, I agree, Shakik. I think you mentioned like how there's lack of publicity about these things, even though everyone's life is valuable and doesn't matter where you come from. And I think I was reading Twitter this morning, and you guys remember the Prime Minister's comments last week about how Aboriginal peoples don't have a history of slavery. And then I think the Education Minister this morning or sometime today, they cut funding on humanities subjects. And I think to me, like, this is the time where we need really strong, truthful and honest journalism. And by cutting funding of humanities subjects, histories, like, I really don't think he's doing us a benefit here. But I'll ask Samzin, have you seen any similarities between your experience as a refugee and isolation in that period and now in this pandemic?
Yes, like as a refugee, it's when you get into a new country, it's always kind of isolated. Like when you don't know anyone, and you starting a life where, like for myself, it's like it's not like everyone else, because who came from another country. There's like 3 times of new, like starting new life kind of thing. And so first time you born in Tibet, and then you start like learning everything as a person, as a social life, everything. But then when you are young enough and to like when you are well enough to understand everything, but then you have to change another place, and then where you start life again and getting friends and everyone, and then you have to change another place, and then you're starting everything up. So it's kind of isolated sometimes, but for myself as a Tibetan, there's like bigger than myself, the things that's happening for my country and inside Tibet, and those around like the current situation inside Tibet is like for all Tibetans like who are outside in the Tibet, are like more concerned than about Tibet inside Tibet, because they are in where there's no freedom of speech, and there's no freedom of language and culture, anything that you can express with same as we here. So so even though you are very isolated and you feel like you are not connecting sometimes, but still we think that it's a process of engaging with other people. Like we got used to it, because when we get through many times, many people, we meet many people, different people, and changing different places, then you can learn the adaptive skill. Like you will understand how to engage with other people, and so it's kind of you learning the isolation from experience, like the isolated area. More like, because this time everyone is being like going similar situation, but for as a refugee, it's more like a lived experience. I think more like when ongoing experience, and yeah, so it's kind of. But we get to, for myself as a first, yeah, everyone is same. Like going first time is always the process going of isolating, or like where not many people you know, and even you know them and you don't have the language you're speaking, and you have to learn everything, like the way of the living, and everyone thinks that some people thinks that you know that one, but you don't know, like people born with this one, but I'm not born with that. So like things you feel like alienated sometimes, but you are not from that area, but this kind of experience is ongoing things. So but still we are learning and we are adapting with this. So yeah, we are surviving with this. I think kind of.
Yeah, that's really true. You know, your point about how like this isolation is a lived experience, and it's continuous for former refugees like ourselves, like our parents, our families, and ourselves. We've experienced this, so it's nothing new. I know a lot of people are struggling with it, but perhaps we've become so desensitized to this notion of self-isolation and alienation, because we've already experienced it, that now it doesn't phase us as much as it did before. You both mentioned how you were quite literally tasked with this concept of surviving during your entire refugee journey. And I think as a young person, I just reflect on that generational gap. You know, while right now we're sort of preoccupied with, like self-isolating, self-actualization, existential suffering, finding ourselves, we're bored, whatever. But you know, for our families and for former refugees and for refugees in limbo at the moment, isolation for them is constructed constantly, and it means that they're putting their lives on the line for a better future, you know, and they're managing their lives fundamentally marked by this palpable sense of their own deportability, sorry. Like Shakik, you talked about that as well, and Samzin, you mentioned deportation as well, and it's really scary to think that, you know, right now we might be complaining about, you know, lack of connection, but at the same time, it's like, when you think about what our parents have went through and our families, it's just on a different ball game. And something else that came to mind is that most refugee communities are collectivists, which means that communal gatherings, lunches, dinners are super common. And most of the time, women are at the forefront of this occasion, you know, spending whole days of cooking and preparation. And COVID has affected this, and isolation is a theme that rings again. Like, is that something that has affected you as well? Are family members, were they still coming over? I know there's a bit of leniency right now with the restrictions, but before, how did that impact communal gatherings or family gatherings, etc.? Shaki?
With the family gatherings, to be honest, I'll first make a point about the whole virus thing. So my family fled the persecution of Taliban, okay, from Afghanistan to Iran. And we've lived in Iran under horrible, horrible circumstances for years, you know, being dehumanized, being called, you know, a dirty Afghan, being pointed out in the street, you know, by random people, okay, just like degrading you as a human and putting you down for like literally your nationality, okay? So when the whole COVID-19 came on, we were like, we survived that, we survived the Taliban, a genocide, we survived, you know, the Iranian horrible treatment of Afghans. So we definitely are going to survive this one as well. So that was like a massive theme that I saw in a lot of like refugee survivors. That's what I like to call them, like, you know, because you constantly go through a lot of things. You're constantly in survival mode, okay? Especially our parents. To be honest, I can say from my own personal experience that my father or my mom, both of them, they're always constantly in survival mode, because that's what they have been inhibited to do, because that's what they have been always had to do in order to survive, and, you know, in order for their family to survive. So they were like always cautious. Hence why, going back to the whole gathering thing, my family we were like very, very cautious. We were not having you know, big gatherings. My whole like family is big, so there's about 7 of us in the house. We were all isolated, we were all at home, we were all like, you know, really careful, because, you know, there's something also else about, you know, migrants and refugees. When they come to Australia, we don't always feel exactly part of the community, of the Australian community, because we kind of feel excluded and isolated in the first place, because we don't look the same, we're not assimilating enough. Hence why we always stay on the sidelines, we always you know, follow the rules. That's something that I like really, really have seen in literally every single like Afghan migrant or like refugee community. We really obey by the rules. So with the gatherings, we didn't have a lot of like gatherings and things as such. However, there was definitely a big sense of like, you know, distance between people. For example, for refugees, we've already left our families, you know, in overseas, in Afghanistan, in Iran, in Pakistan, like they're all over the world. And now when we came to Australia, we created like a small community, you know, small friendships with other people that we knew. And with the virus came, we didn't have that anymore either. So definitely there was a massive sense of isolation and like the whole thing, survival mode coming on again. So yeah, that was my experience with that.
I agree. And I think an important distinction to make while we're drawing these parallels and similarities is that this pandemic like is a natural disaster, even though a lot of people like dispute that, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories. But I think it's such a huge distinction to make, you know, to compare the refugee experience, even though like there are similarities. It's just I think there's a huge sort of like disparity between those two. Samzin, like, would you agree?
Yes, yes, I think yeah, that's it's really true that there's lots of gatherings and all of these friendships. Actually, we are staying together. But for myself, we have in Blue Mountain we have a small community, and we used to have some small gathering as well. So and that's all we have. But that's yeah not gonna happen because everyone's going through this same situation, and we are not taking as a special case, but for as a refugee, let's say Shane, yeah, as you say that we like all our parents and families are all in like yeah family members or everyone in overseas. So for myself, it's my family members are all in overseas, and this is also kind of a special thing that's a worse issue is in that for Tibet in my country where we can't actually contact with our family, and because everything's censored and everything's whenever you contact your family, everything you, and then they will get punishment for that. What's called capital, crime punishment or something like that. So it's just against with their law. So yeah, so I can't contact with them even with COVID-19 or without COVID-19. I can't contact with them. But and like only that I have family members here, like my husband and my friend here. So we couldn't go out together, but even we can keep touch with these technological things. And I have some sisters in other places in Europe area where we can contact, but still, yeah, they're all living into like a place as everyone. So COVID-19 times, it's yeah, there's not much gathering. That's everyone else. Yeah, so I agree that yeah.
Thank you, Samzin and Shakik. Something I wanted to mention as well, like I realized a lot of the members of the community, both men and women, are in essential service jobs, you know, working at the front lines of, you know, working in trade. A lot of them are working in grocery stores and menial labor. And, you know, when you think about that as well, you think even just within Australia, the risks are ever so present. And I feel as though there isn't enough support. Do you feel that as well? Where have you been receiving your support, if any?
I have to definitely make a comment about that, okay? When the whole COVID-19 came on, a lot of people that have a lot of privilege, like, this is a great time to work on that amazing idea that I always wanted to do. You're making excuses if you always want to say, I don't have time. Now you have time. Now you're stuck at home. But people don't really realize that a lot of people need to literally go on day labor in order to make food and bring food to the table for their families. And that is like so important to realize that, you know, all those people, like the trade is getting support, you know, especially migrants and refugees around this time. Migrants, fine, okay, because especially if you're like you have a good visa, like a permanent visa, which is the one that I have. I'm so thankful. You know, the situations are a little bit, you know, easier for you, okay, because at least if you have been laid off your job, you can claim for job seeker payment and things like that. But people that are asylum seekers, people that have came to Australia after 2013 onwards, are actually many of them don't still have a proper visa. They're still on Chef visa, Chef Heaven visa, and they're actually not eligible to get any absolutely no sort of payment from the government, and life is just so difficult for them, especially during this time, and they literally have no sort of support for them from the government, and sort of the only support that they can get is maybe from the salvos, or there are some community organizations such as I think it's ASMR, I think, community organization that provides some sort of like food staples that gives out to them. So it's like really important to keep those things in mind as well, because when natural disaster happens, it has a sort of a different level of impact on each person, depending on your privilege, depending on your visa, depending on like where you come from, depending on the person that you are, and the, you know, the family that you have. So it's like very, very crucial to have those things in mind.
Yeah, I definitely think this like refugee experience within this pandemic context is not universal. Like by no means we're saying that, we're just sharing our own experiences within that. And I think like you mentioned a really good point about privilege and what type of visa you have and how that like impacts your entire experience as well. Samzin, like, do you agree with that as well? Do you think that has this affected your disability support work?
Yes, it's actually I also do interpreting work as well, health interpreter and as well. So that was actually mostly have to cut off. Like I haven't done anything since the COVID-19. Only some phone calls. Before I used to do a few on-site interpretings, and so that was also another impact that's done COVID-19 thing. And for the disability support worker, I think there was it's a essential work, and it is very essential work that we do. But there wasn't much support, we think, because we had to. I do a two different job, like same company but two different job, where one is day program and one other is housing, and so. Where the day program had to close, and so we had to work in a house where that, and we had like many of the support work, not just my experience, but many of them had never got the support that they need. Like they haven't, because the day program is closed and they can't get the what's called the job keepers payment or whatever it is. So that's, they haven't got that one. And so some of them have that problem. And also for myself, I think actually I was being more busy than that, but as there's nothing special support or things for like essential workers as a disability support workers. So yeah, we had to work and every time, and of course that's we have to do, but there was nothing like because it's a bit scary sometimes going there, and even because the people we're looking after are very because have like health issues for themselves. So because we're going out and going in there, and it may impact them as well. So it's a bit scary for work with like sometimes, and so it's just so
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think we have to be careful, especially when we're in those essential service jobs and we're working with, you know, patients who have a disability or are immunocompromised and are more vulnerable to this pandemic. So thank you for bringing that point up.
Yeah, I just also have to add something in regards to access to support and support in general from the government. I do know that this is a collaboration between Settlement Services International and the Blue Mountains Women's Center. So the next point that I'm going to be telling you about is about the not enough support for women. So in refugee communities, migrant communities, just like the other rest of the Australian community, domestic violence, the issue of domestic violence is quite very prevalent, mostly because of, cultural differences and lack of sufficient education, and all that. So the issue of domestic violence is quite huge. And with the rise of COVID-19, there was like a bigger risk of women being at risk. And to be honest, I was looking into that and I did not see a lot of enough sufficient support. And also, I'm not saying there's not support, there is support. However, for people of migrant and refugee background, it is much more difficult to access those, especially due to language barriers and language difficulties, because a lot of people that I know, like from refugee communities, they just have difficulty speaking English, so accessing those services and accessing those information would be so difficult for them in the first place as well.
I definitely agree, and I can attest to that as well. Now, our law firm doesn't deal with criminal law matters, but I do know that many officers around in the city have experienced a huge steep rise in domestic violence based inquiries, you know, since the lockdown restrictions were imposed. And generally speaking, you're exactly right. Like, refugee women are incredibly vulnerable in this process, and a lot of the time don't have the networks, don't have trauma-informed coping mechanisms to deal with that. Sorry, I just realized there's a comment section and I'm reading everyone's comments. Thank you, guys. Community legal centers can help, but the barriers are huge. Tatiana, thank you for your comment. Like, I definitely agree. Shakik spoke about language barriers, which was a huge, and the networks, and just not having those coping mechanisms as well. I think since we're on this issue of accountability as well, like who do you expect the support to come from? Because I know that non-government organizations, non-profit, they may be holding some of the burden for that, but at the end of the day, like, where should we be targeting this accountability? Because I do know that because settlement has stopped, you know, it's cut back on a lot of revenue. I spoke about this with Marcella just before we started this live session. So Shakik, what do you think in terms of like accountability and call to action? Like, call to action, yeah.
So with accountable, there's actually two parts to this question. First, there's accountability that you asked who we should be holding accountable. Yeah. And to be honest, we can't just like point fingers to other people like, hey, this person, that person. First, we should hold ourselves accountable to be able to support as much support, to be able to provide as much support as we can to people that we know that we are vulnerable. So for example, if you know a woman that you know is having issues with their partner and they're going through domestic violence, you should reach out to them and tell them, hey, in case you need any help, I'm happy to translate for you. I'm happy to give you a hand, okay? Tell me if there's anything I can do to support you. A lot of also this comes from we shouldn't be like having toxic positivity. I'm not sure if many of people here have heard about that term, which means like when somebody is going through a problem, like, oh my God, no, that's okay, you'll be fine. Just, you know, what we have in our language, we say something, tawakkul la khuda, okay, which translates to just rely on God, which is a great thing, but God sends help through his people, okay? I'm not going to get religious, but I feel like you can't just tell a person like, you know, depend on God and he's going to fix everything for you. You as a person also have the responsibility to provide as much support as you can. You know, you don't have to go like above and beyond all the time if you don't have the capacity, if you don't have the mental capacity, or like literally have no idea what you're doing. It's fine, but you can also always refer someone. You know someone that can provide help. So to answer the first question, I think it always starts with you, and secondly, it's always also on the government and on the non-governmental organizations to actually have an ecosystem that everybody gets support. People that are marginalized are not forgotten about. For example, as I've already mentioned, people with Aboriginal visas, they're extremely marginalized in our community. So those are very important to remember. Vulnerable people that don't speak English, don't have their language capacity to do this. So it's very important for the government and non-organizational governments such as SSI, such as Community Migrant Assistance Center, Open Diversity Services, and all those to reach out to their clients and tell them, are you doing okay? Can we support you in any way? And I think Tatiana also mentioned that local legal centers can provide help. So yes, you know, if you know someone, tell them, hey, you know, refer them and all that. That is very important. The second question was, sorry, my memory is like a fish. I forgot. Do you mind repeating it again?
Yeah, just call to action, I suppose. Yes, what the audience can do to enact change or support members of the community.
Thank you for that. Actually, I was going to, I prepared the whole thing that you can do. So one of the most important things that you can do, write letters to your local MP, write them and tell them that people of the marginalized community from refugee background, especially asylum seekers, are going through such a difficult time. Tell them to change policies, tell them to be able to give them the job seeker payments, tell them to actually able them, somebody saying political activism, yes, exactly, to give them the rights, to speed up the process to approve their visas, because it is not just during COVID-19, okay, that we have to be giving the bridging people with bridging visa support. It's also after that, they don't have access to education, they don't really they're not able to actually access jobs as well, because they have a lot of English barriers, and there is no sort of courses that are offered to them, because they also have to pay huge amounts of money for it, and they're like the most marginalized people ever. So literally write to your MP, write a handwritten letter, like just write it down, okay? Sorry, I'm very aggressive, but I really, really want you to do it, because it makes a huge, huge difference, okay? Talk to them, okay? Talk to them, go tell them, write a letter a week or something, okay? And what else can you do? You can actually just, if you know a refugee or a person in the community, ask them if there's anything you can do to support them. Like, because to be honest, one of the things that a lot of refugee people say, like, I don't want to be seen as a refugee, okay? So don't treat them as a refugee, treat them like somebody else like yourself, but let them know that you are going to be there in case they need help, in case they need support, in case there's something that you can do for them that they need help doing with. So that's my call to action for you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Shikik. Samzin, what's your call to action?
My call for actions. So my thoughts was like, I can't really find out who is accountable. Mainly I always think about this, how the virus is separated in the world, and it's where it comes from, and that's a big issue thing where everyone's infecting from that kind of thing. And after that, it's all it's more like taking care of each other, and more like that's because during that pandemic time where we are quarantining everyone, and we were like because we can't meet each other, but we were just connecting others, members of community, like if there needs any help. It's not just me, everyone's doing the same. Like if you need any help, and we can contact, and you just let us know, we can help each other, and that's all helping each other in like a kind of difficult time. So it's like everyone is on kind of same page, but if people can deal with it differently. So it's just I don't know who I can like apart from where it's coming from, like it's
Thank you so much for your comments. Do you think there's any sort of support, like in terms of technology, that services can provide?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, sorry. Do you want to go first, Jasmine?
Because of during that COVID-19 time, because there was as everyone before we were going to talk about, like families who are refugee background, and they having kids stay home because they can't go to school, and there was issues like families are having difficulty with the children's education things, like education system, where they are worried about how their studies going on, and they can't help because of the language. They can't understand what their children's learning, but if they are coping well and if they are understanding well. But that's the big issue that parents are worried. That's I already, like I did some phone call and checking on them. So that's the big issue. That's like children are like they're staying home, but families, parents, especially moms, are worried. Like of course the dads worried, but moms like, oh my god, what's like my children, they are got some homework from teachers from school that's doing online thing, and online was also another difficult fighting for them as well. Like they don't have skill with the technology. Like newly arrived family they don't have that skill as well. So it's not just for kids. There's parents also have that difficult, and kids of course. They like one of the parents was going TAFE as well, and she got some TAFE homework, but then her son got some homework as well. So both mom and dad, like mom and child, were difficult, having trouble with the technology thing as well. So they don't have the skill and they don't have much accessible the technology, so like computer or laptop. So that was thing that's difficult for, I think, for as a refugee, I think maybe, yeah.
Okay, did you have any comments to make as well?
No, I absolutely agree. Something else that I was also going to bring up is the lack of sufficient governmental resources in diverse languages for people that don't speak English. For example, information. I can see a lot. I have like literally seen everyone, like my mom, my parents, my dad. They get their information from Facebook in their own language, from WhatsApp. They get it from Viber. People like share information, and a lot of the times, the amount of times that they have come to me with all these crazy conspiracy theories and telling me like, hey, if you don't want to get, the virus, drink lemon juice. Drink lemon juice every day, or like chuck on like ginger, which is like literally unproven medical things. And I think it's so important for the government to actually release information that is in diverse languages, make videos so people that don't speak can, like, not speak, they can't read, can also listen and understand. That's like so important. It's something that I have seen lacking a lot since the whole COVID-19 started. Somebody also, I think Tatiana also mentioned that when government tries to implement solutions, they always think of the privileged, and that is so true, where the privileged people are the first people that can have the best, easiest access to information, medical service, anything, whereas people from marginalized communities, the refugees, the immigrants, the indigenous community are usually the least considered about, which is extremely disappointing, something that we really have to work on as well.
Thank you so much, Samzin, for key commentary. I think we're running well on time. We have 12 minutes. I guess we should go to the audience now and see if you guys have any questions and do a little bit of a Q&A. Just conversational, it'll be informal. Any questions from anyone? Or comments? Doesn't have to be questions.
You can, if you're shy, you can actually type your comment, that's okay, don't worry, all right?
Tatiana, yes.
Hi, it's so lovely to meet you all. Samzin, hello, I live in Katoomba, so I'm part of your neighbourhood, and it's so lovely to meet you, Rooan and Zaki. It's really great to hear you. And just, look, I am a lot older than you, and I migrated here a long time ago, but so many of your stories are resonating with me. And I'm really thinking a lot about what you're saying in terms of COVID, re-triggering some of the things that we've had to deal with when we migrate or we leave our families. And I wonder what that will be like for us, moving forward, for our families, for our parents, our grandparents who have been in a COVID environment and have been triggered into that isolation and those kind of separated kind of existences, and how we'll move forward with that. And I think that there will be some impact on our communities because of that re-triggering. But I also think that there is some hope. I was talking to Auntie Jacinta Tobin, who's an Aboriginal elder in the mountains this morning, and she's feeling really hopeful that this is an opportunity for us to rethink how we live, how we connect, how we do things to try and make some change. So I guess I wanted to ask you, coming through perhaps middle or the other side of COVID, do you feel that there is some hope that there will be some change in how we move forward? Rooan, you've been talking so eloquently about the structures that we have to deal with, and all of you have been sharing the experiences that you've and your families and communities have been through. Do you feel hope? Do you feel that we'll move forward and learn something from here and perhaps make a better world?
Like, absolutely, definitely. I think one of the biggest things about, you know, former refugees and refugees living in limbo, it's that sense of resilience that they form from their journeys and experiences. And there definitely is hope. I mean, speaking to Mum, like, she definitely sees an end to this pandemic and sees a brighter future. And even like me personally, just seeing all the protests that are happening right now, even in the midst of a pandemic, you know, call to action, holding governments accountable, and you know, this right to petition, people are valuing that, you know, more than their own, like, I don't want to say like selfish needs, but like everyone is entitled to, you know, worry about their health. But I think just seeing how selfless people have been and caring for each other and connecting and protesting on the streets and just chanting incredible words, powerful. I just think like I really did think it resonated with me, and I do see hope. Shakik and Samzin, would you agree with what I say?
I do agree with what you say 100%, but I also have to say that I do feel hopeful that this is definitely an experience that is going to teach the world to be definitely kinder, okay, to connect better. It's going to really transform the way that we connect and we become, like, we interact with each other as humans. But to be honest, I am quite hopeless at the same time, because right now the rise of COVID-19 has been going crazy in Afghanistan, and Afghanistan is an extremely disadvantaged country. We don't have a proper healthcare system, we don't have enough trained medical staff, we don't have enough ventilators, and people are literally wasting away just because, you know, they can't, we don't, like, there's not a good hospital or healthcare system. And that makes me feel so hopeless, because it makes me like, oh my god, we have my whole extended family from my mom's side and some of my father's side are in Afghanistan living there, and I am just so worried because you know, they have like young children, and you know, the impact of COVID-19 could really be implicated on them. So I'm hopeful and hopeless at the same time. I'm kind of in a, you know, dilemma. I don't know how to feel, but I do know that, you know, we are definitely going to be learning something from this, okay? And you know, we're going to learn that we have to be better and we have to do more. Especially right now, I'm really glad that, you know, COVID-19 hasn't been impacting Australia as crazy as it has been affecting countries like Iran or countries like America. So I'm glad with that, which means that we are going to be setting the tone for other countries to learn from us. We have to learn from New Zealand. That's my opinion, but like in general, it's good. You know, we're going to be improving. In my language, I mean, in my religion, we say inshallah, which means God willing, and I really hope that happens. And also, I really hope, like, I pray genuinely that, you know, situation gets better in Afghanistan. There can something happen, because it's, you know, quite wild out there right now.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think Tatiana wrote, you know, perhaps our hope is privilege, particularly in Australia, and it's
exactly
recognizing our context, where we live, our jobs and everything. And I think, you know, Australia and New Zealand, they've been just so incredibly privileged. I mean, looking even at America, like, they're just not doing a great job at it either. But I think even more, like, for developing countries who don't have proper structures, who don't have capacity to support vulnerable communities and, you know, their citizens, it's just really disheartening, and it's really hard for refugees to reconnect those two, you know, while you're living in a country that has a great structure to deal with a pandemic. You know, your heart is in your home country, and it's hard to connect the two. What are your thoughts, Samzin?
Yes, I actually very hopeful now. Yes, it's kind of because during the pandemic, because everyone is staying home, and but for myself, like, everyone's going like different daily with dealing it differently, and they have different lifestyle. But for myself, I was kind of busy during the COVID-19, like more busy than before. And because I during COVID-19, because like, it's kind of reflecting yourself, where you are running after, what you're doing and what you want to do for future and what you're hopeful. So during the COVID-19, like, everyone's closed, and I don't have to go for interpreting, and then I only do the job that I am doing, like disability support work. and even it's got sometimes like less hours, sometimes more hours because of the people got restricted to work in different places. So anyway, so I was being busy because on that day, like during the COVID-19 times, I've been doing like lots of reflection, and also kind of doing some that I love to do, like cultural for myself. What that means, coming from like a cultural dance performance thing, I love to doing that, and I did lots of days. And also the big thing I did because I was going to do uni, and I wasn't sure because I have to do work, and I have to I have to get some money to build the future kind of thing. And so I have to work, but then I wanted to do uni as well at the same time. And then I wasn't sure when I gonna start it. But then during the COVID-19, then I started doing the uni online because I thought that's because I got time, and it's more flexible, and then I thought that during the COVID-19 it's more like everyone's on the like live chat and everything. And so it's why should I not learn that, take this chance like an opportunity to grow myself and to study. And so I started doing that. So I decided to do the uni during the COVID-19. So that was good thing for me that's happening. And also I'm hopeful because of the COVID-19 thing. I'm sorry, just it's for my personal life and for my country, like everyone else, because Tibet has been going lots of political issues and having lots of tough time, and because of the Chinese treatment and what they do for the people, and no human rights, like that's all happening inside Tibet. So that's why so there was no kind of so how they do the ill treatments happening inside Tibet, and now that's kind of affecting where the virus is coming, affecting like how it's because of their negligence and their not careful precaution or whatever, like taking care of that, not being accountable with that. So it's everyone's affecting by this. So it's because now it's everyone's realizing what's happening. And so as a country, Australia, where we are free here and independent, like more like a democratic, everyone can say and speak out for freedom, and very free country where you can enjoy the free speech. But then now it's everyone realizing when you are depending on one country and everything, it's not easy for one country to depend one country who is treated badly for human rights and everything. It's kind of a changing environment and changing globally and changing politically everything. It's not just for as a refugee, but everyone. And for Tibetan and for myself, I think it's a positive change, because everyone needs to know you have to stand up yourself, and you have to know where your place, and there's no place that you can stand someone lay on someone and to get whatever you want, and then don't ignore, like you ignore the rest of the people and rest of the wise people. So it's more important to look after your own people, and I think that's why Australian government, I'm grateful Australian government for everything they have done for as a Tibetan myself. And but it's all like politically, it's sometimes there's lots of influence and lots of things that's happening inside in Tibet, in Australia. So it's afraid me, like scaring me at sometimes, because I'm coming from this kind of area where there's no good treatment for people, and there was no human rights, there was no like human value that are treated equally inside Tibet, and not just in Tibet, and there's lots of other minority groups where they're suffering bad consequences of this Chinese regime. So that's why I think it's helpful because people need to reflect where you're standing, and yeah, you have to stand up for yourself, I think. Yeah.
So much, Samzin. I know you've hit the time. It's exactly 7 o'clock right now, but there's a really good question from Jude that I wanted to get to. And her question is, what can women's health centers be doing, for refugee women? What are some key health needs? Could you have any comments on that?
Women Health Center?
Yeah, like what can women's health centers be doing, and what are the key health needs for refugee women?
I was related to Women's Health Center in Blue Mountain. I was very glad that even it's a very small community as myself and the Tibetan refugee here, but they have been involved with many of them, like women who has to go there, and some special treatment, I mean free treatments, and lots of them happening for them. It's very helpful, like having some women with health issues and can go there, and also there was some women's group activity where happening, meeting with other women and connecting with them was very helpful. And I think sometimes I always have a kind of a language barrier, but still it's always good to meet other women together. So that was a good place where I also been there with someone else, but then they kind of enjoying with that thing. So, but I heard that there was not many kind of funding for especially refugee or women's thing. Like, I mean, the women's center, but it's not like a refugee women thing. Or there was no like particular funding for them to run kind of activity or programs for especially to connect with these kind of things. So, but I understand that. So, but it's very helpful if that kind of things happening in next time.
Exactly. Really great points, actually. Creating a sense of community is extremely important. What I would say as my response would be also a focus on mental health, because that is so important, especially during this time and after this period, because as Tatiana did mention, some of these experiences that have people have been through have been triggering past trauma. So it's extremely important to have also a focus on that, like a therapy session or some sort of something that would lift up their mental health. And I think that's important. I think we also have another question. Do you have any other question, Rooan?
Angela asks about health promotion for women from refugee backgrounds. I guess going along with that conversation on key health needs, and you mentioned like mental health issues, and just thinking about the conversation that Tatiana started about, like triggering past events and triggering self-isolation from refugee and migrant journeys and experiences. And I just think it's really important that services provide those coping mechanisms to refugee women, and having that sort of capacity to ensure that they're taking care of themselves, not just physically in this pandemic, but also mentally, because we are self-isolating, and refugee women in particular do carry a lot of burdens within their household. So just providing support in that as well.
Yeah, actually, like a great segue to my next point is actually, so as I said, I'm really connected in the community, especially with the younger people of like the younger refugees and migrants from Afghanistan. And COVID-19 has been like really affecting us all, to be honest, because there's like the pressure from the family to do well in university and in high school, because somehow our ancestors are looking up to us, and if we don't do well, we're like failures and we're not good. So that's why it's been like really difficult. Hence why I was thinking of actually organizing, like after restrictions are easier, and we can organize like a gathering for Afghan girls to come around and have like dance and like have a little bit of food maybe. So if there's anyone that has a venue, hit me up later. Okay, I'll send my email. I'll put my email in the chat so we can talk about it later as well. Okay.
Amazing. I think we're right on time, so I'll just wrap up. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and celebrating as we see the strength and resilience of refugee women and all of us, to be honest, during COVID-19 and beyond. And I do think there is like I am feeling a sense of hope, especially when I do these panels and talks with people. Like I do feel that there is hope that resonates with me, and I think there's a brighter future, and definitely I see an Australian society that reigns on dignity and human respect, and I think we will definitely get through this. So thank you, Shakik, thank you, Samzin, thank you to Marcella, thank you, Sherry, and thank you to the support and for coordinating this. Thank you to our live viewers as well. Thank you so much for jumping on here and joining and support and just reading the comment section. Like, thank you so much. Just been great.